All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here today. We have an awesome live stream for you. Welcome to Simply Cyber, the YouTube channel designed to help you make and take a cybersecurity career further, faster. And I am super pumped for today's live stream. We have assembled an international cast of cybersecurity recruiters who are ready to answer all your questions. We've already pre-screened a bunch of questions. I've met these guys in the green room. They are all excellent. They're professionals in our space, and they are going to be kind of pulling back the curtain and telling us what's up. So let's meet our esteemed panel. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Here they are. So we are joined by the following individuals from their respective countries. From Australia, starting at the top right, we are joined by Ricky Burke. Ricky is the founder of Cybersec People. He's the host of Hacking into Security podcast. He's the AllSec Meetup co-founder. He's a board director at the Australian Women in Security Network, and he's heavily involved in the Australian B-Sides community. And if you're old enough like me, he's also published in 2600, which is going way back OG style. So from the Australian continent, Ricky Burke, thank you for being here, Ricky.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So going on down the list, moving into the UK and the land of football with your actual feet, we are joined by Paul Charles. Paul specializes in filling positions within the cybersecurity industry, particularly penetration testing or ethical hacking in either permanent or freelance contracts in both the UK and USA. So kind of mix and match whatever you want, but the country and the job and the style seem to be the options, right? He also strives to help the community with sponsoring various online platforms so people can learn for free and regular attendance at meetups all over the country. So a great contributor to the cybersecurity community. Welcome, Paul, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. From the great state up north, America's top hat, we're joined by Daryl Daly from Ontario. Tough break on the Canadians, Daryl. Daryl has 20 plus years, the Montreal Canadiens, by the way, not the overall Canadians, okay? So Daryl's got 20 plus years of recruiting success in the US and Canadian technology professional services and the IT resourcing industry. He is an expert himself in technology, sales and marketing, and professional services, and he's bilingual. So, that's certainly not something I can do. So, Daryl, thanks for being here and contributing the way you do.
Thank you, and glad to be here.
Excellent. And to round out our international panel from the home of the, I guess we, appropriated red, white, and blue, even though most flags have red, white, and blue in it. We are joined with friend of the show and regular guest on Simply Cyber, Joe Hudson. Joe's obviously, I said, a friend of the show. He's the principal security recruiting lead at HuntSource, and his storied work experience includes being not just an awesome recruiter in the cybersecurity industry, but a former elementary school teacher and a backup dancer for Britney Spears. Joe, thank you so much for being with us today. You always bring the heat. Really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks. Yeah, that might be the last time I do a show if I have to fend off the Britney Spears argument again.
Well, don't hide from your past, Joe. All right, so we are going to launch right into it because it's all about your time and making it absolutely valuable while we're here. Like I said, we've got a bunch of questions already pre-screened for the panel, but I want you to submit your questions in the comments. I'll be, letting them talk, and I'll be going through the questions in the live stream and pulling those out and doing, rapid fire to these guys. So please submit your questions and let's have some fun. Okay, so let's jump right into it and get started with Daryl from Canada. Okay, so Daryl, one of the questions that was submitted via the YouTube channel was, can we know if someone who's CompTIA certified but without experience in the field is considered a skilled worker in Canada?
So the term skilled worker is for immigration purposes. So the big thing I want to just make sure I make it super clear is I am not an immigration expert, nor am I an immigration lawyer. With that said, for skilled worker status, it generally comes down to education, which is a bachelor's or a master's, and then the actual work experience rather than the industry certifications. So as far as I know, for Canada, industry certifications such as CompTIA, CCNA, other Cisco certs do not count towards points in the skilled worker immigration system.
Interesting. And as a follow-up to that, and I kind of want to throw this one over to Joe. like, what Tom Hicks in the live stream asked a similar question about, if you go and get this certification, maybe it doesn't consider you a skilled worker in the Canadian, but how do you use these type of certifications to market yourself for entry level?
Yeah, well, I think that the knowledge of these certification programs in the United States is, it's pretty profound. I think the opportunities of people find and people to connect with online. I think that's the biggest difference probably in the United States that I see versus other countries, is just the accessibility of finding security professionals or people that are going through the exact same thing that you're going through. And one of the biggest mistakes I find is that people wait until they finish these certification programs or whatnot until that's when they start networking. That's when they start looking. That's when they start collecting information. And I feel like as you're going through that, start to network. Try to find some groups on Discord or some of the other sites that we tend not to name a lot of. But these are people that have shared experiences and they can give you tips that are going to help you out. But those training programs, they're not typically going to count as experience here either. But they can get a job. It's just the lack of the opportunities at the entry level that we're seeing in the United States that I feel like is the biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So thank you, gentlemen. So moving over to Ricky in Australia. Ricky, what's the best way to represent your cybersecurity experience on your resume when it's over 10 years old? And I think what they mean is your actual experience. Maybe you a stay-at-home parent for 10 years, or you just went on mini retirement, whatever. What do you think about this?
Question. You've got to. I think that the most important thing is you've got to look at what you have to offer and also what you're applying for. So the reality is, if you don't have relevant experience, then you're probably not right for the role anyway. And experience can come through work experience. It can come through self-learning. The thing is, whether someone's been out of work for a long time or whether someone's trying to be a student and get their first job in industry, it's a very similar situation. Is you don't have the maybe recent work experience to back it up. So for me, it's all about the self-learning. And a lot of people miss that trick when it comes to putting that on their resume. Resumes, I hate them. I don't, there's such an archaic way of I guess, assessing, evaluating people, but we don't really have many better things. But people need to do a better job of presenting themselves and look at the most sort of relevant stuff that they have to offer. So look at the job description, maybe for a role they're applying for. Be specific as well, because too many people want to get into cyber, but they don't actually look at the roles, because every single role, every sort of domain of security, whether it's application security, governance, risk compliance, whether it's architecture, whether it's an incident responder, penetration tester, they all require different skill sets. And people need to be more specific about, okay, this is the area of security that I want to focus on. These are the skills that I need to go and learn. These are the things that I'm spending my time on. And that's what I'm going to talk about on the, in my job application, in my cover letter, and sort of tell the story about where my interest in security and what I'm doing about it. And I think that's the sort of message that I would recommend. Is that's what you want to try and get across for prospective employers. And also, I think having that cover letter, something like that explaining your story. So I'd always recommend a bit of a bio synopsis, whatever you want to call it. Because when I send a candidate to a customer, I'm sending the CV, but I hate CVs. My goal is to send an email with a synopsis of the candidate of basically generating enough interest in my write-up that they don't even have to look at the CV. I'm explaining, I know what you're looking for. This is why this person matches your requirements. And the cover letter does the same thing. If you're being sensible with your approach, you're looking at, okay, that's the job description. That's what they're looking for. These are the things that I will address in that cover letter, and also highlight how hardworking I am in terms of these are the extra activities that I'm doing. And this is why I'm passionate, because that's what hiring managers want to see. They want to see passion. They want to see that it's not just a job. And the reality is most people don't have all the skills for every job because every job advert looks like a shopping list. And it's hard for people to identify what are the key skills they're looking for, but at least try and address that in the cover letter itself. So sorry, long answer, but it's not an easy topic, and people need to do a really good job of representing themselves, and they need to be very specific about the additional learning that they're doing and why they're right for that role and also that company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Joe, you have a saying, for things like this, really kind of own it and don't hide from it. Don't try to shy from it. You've said it before on the channel. Do you want to kind of elaborate on that particular kind of mantra?
Well, I think, Ricky, you made two really good points there that I feel like are kind of glossed over sometimes in the process of looking for jobs and how you get to it. But, it's very tough to, I think, show certain things on a resume. When you've been a stay-at-home mom or you took care of your dad who was ill for the last year, the first section is not like, hey, personal random information you want to share. It's oftentimes professional experience. And you're like, how do I put this in there? Cover letters, I think, often are glossed over too, but that is a perfect scenario where take advantage of a cover letter to get in front of that, to say, hey, I want to introduce you to why, what I've been doing to offset the lack of in-house professional experience. And you could just list, 4 or 5 bullets. I've been getting training through this, or I've been studying for this. And you also mentioned another point that I think is kind of the valuable part of our jobs, because I think some recruiters, they're going to weigh their success on how well they find the right candidate that the manager is looking for. But I think equally fun is helping a candidate that otherwise might not have a chance to even get visibility and be that advocate and storyteller. And then they actually do talk to and hire that person. And so being able to have someone that can articulate the story for you is probably more valuable than anything sometimes. So it just kind of got my wheels spinning there, Ricky. I think that was a good insight about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking a question from the audience, Paul, and this one we're going to kind of start picking from the audience, but Ludus actually asked a really good question. I'm kind of interested in the proper British response to this. What are the do's and don'ts that you tell your candidates when you're basically sending them into the interview?
So obviously it depends on the kind of interview. I think these days a lot of interviews are done over Zoom, and we sort of had to got used to how you prepare yourself for that. So there's a few Zoom things you've got to be aware of. So obviously watch what's in your background, because you don't want to give away too much about your personal life sometimes, or you don't want to have something in there that could potentially put an employer off when you're interviewing. And obviously top half smart. One thing I recommend as well, if it's a Zoom, have a load of sticky notes around your screen if you've got particular questions that you want to ask. So interviews, I think this is important. It is a two-way street. They're interviewing you for a job to see if they want to employ you, but equally you should treat it as, I'm going to potentially give a couple of years of my life to this company. Are they going to be worth my time? So it's important that you ask questions. I think that's really, that's probably the key takeaway. And I recommend sticking sticky notes around your screen so you don't forget them. And also it looks like you're not looking down all the time. It's a bit of social engineering, I guess.
Yeah, those are really great tips, and kind of ones that people might not think of because they're so hyper focused on the technical or, whatever the perceived technical elements of whatever the interview is going to be. That's really interesting. And I'm curious if anyone else on the panel has any diehard best practices that are, a bit more uncommon or that you share with your candidates. No, pretty standard, or
just if you don't have the experience, don't try to BS your way through it. I mean, I think that's like a universal don't do now. Just own that too and flip it, ask some questions. Hey, I don't really have a lot of experience with that. That's actually one of the reasons I was interested in this position. How much of an opportunity will I get in the early stages to really get to that? Who's doing that right now? Flip it and just start putting questions on them to where they already forgot the fact that you don't even have it. Maybe that'll work. But if you just try to BS your way, no matter how many great skills you have, you may have already shot yourself in the foot, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah.
Also, go on. Sorry. Darryl?
So, I've been in this a long time as well, and I've always found that the more experienced a technical person is specifically, the more they like to go from the gut. They like to shoot from the hip, especially in interviews. So I always try to let them know that is not necessarily their strength. Their technical skills might be their strength, but shooting from the hip when it matters might not be their strength. So I think I'm a big fan of preparing candidates, I'm a big fan of trying to role play a couple key questions where they can give 1.5 minute answer. Here's the question, a 1.5 minute answer. I'm not putting words in their mouth. I'm not giving them the right answer per se, but I'm certainly trying to help them get in that interview mindset, if that makes sense, because it's, yes, it's about them, but it's also about the person across the screen or across the desk interviewing them, and that has to be top of mind.
Interesting. Ricky, yeah.
Yes, and also research. Actually know who you're interviewing with. It's bloody embarrassing when someone interviews with a company and the feedback from the customer is that person didn't even know us. Like, we obviously, as recruiters, we do our best, as Daryl said, to prepare someone. So we've got like a sort of set process of walking someone through, these are the do's, these are the don'ts. And one of them is preparation. I think it's very evident how interested someone is in the role and that company, how much time they put into preparation. So not just knowing who the company is, but who you're interviewing with. Look on LinkedIn. Do you have mutual contacts? Security is a very small world. And just go beyond the company website. Do some search in terms of, a bit of OSINT, fancy Googling of, Google News and other stuff. Is there recent news you should know about? Because if you can tell that the interviewer something that maybe they weren't expecting you to know, that shows that you actually give a crap. And too often people will go through the motions of just interviewing for jobs, applying for stuff, maybe not even really know what they're interviewing for. And the thing is that manager's giving up their time because they're looking to hire someone. They want to hire the right person for their team and that company, not just a person. And likewise, someone interviewing should be looking for the right company for them, the right manager for them. And it's a really bad look if someone doesn't prepare for that interview.
All excellent points, 100-fold. So moving to Paul real quick. Paul, I'm kind of curious. There's a whole bunch of questions in live stream right now that are all kind of similar, but it's a bigger topic in our industry, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. So Parthik asked the question: would you recommend a master's degree in cyber for an international student, right? Or is it better to get cert? Which to me leads a bigger question of, is going higher education and making that time and financial commitment worth it in cyber right now? And I might run around the panel a little bit because I'm interested. I have a perception, but it's completely American based. And I'm curious in the international space, how is this perceived? So Paul, if you would.
So I'll just stick to the UK for now, and then let the guys talk about their own countries. So in the UK, a master's degree or any degree in cyber isn't as valuable as certifications. The UK is dominated by a certification body called CREST. Ricky probably knows them because they're also in Australia. And they have certification for every sort of different job you can do. There's one for pen testing, there's one for incident response, there's one for threat intel, all kinds of different roles. A degree, I don't really see the value in it really at all. There's only a few companies that sort of hold out sort of old school thinking that would say, we need a degree for this job. Most of the other times, I don't really see it. So I think the answer to the question, for the UK, it's better to get certified.
Yeah. Okay. Ricky, what about Australia? Since pulling that crest in a little bit.
Yeah. No. Further education is helpful, and because I get this message so often. To be honest with you, I'll link certifications with this as well. Is there's no one certification or degree that's going to get someone a job. And you've got to look what's behind it. If your intention is to get a job, then you need the skill. Realistically, you need the skills that the job requires. A degree generally isn't teaching you that. There are some good courses and good educators out there, good tutors, but they're not going to get you a job. Not once have I ever sent someone to a hiring manager and say, hey, this person's got a cybersecurity bachelor's or even master's. Like, the hiring managers just don't generally care. for those things. It's all about what the person. Like, I'm more interested if someone's done a degree. What else have they done beyond that in their spare time outside of the formal education? So if someone wants to do something for the sake of learning, fantastic. Go for the experience, get the learning, but you need to do other stuff on top of that, because that's not going to land you a job on its own.
Yeah. Daryl, how's Canada treating the degrees? I know we talked offline before about it, so kind of curious to share that.
Well, I have kind of a little story just to kind of lead up to it. So I have several children who are elite athletes, and you know, they share their sports with other really driven type A personalities. And in both of their sports, a lot of people, they all want to be physiotherapists, and it's very highly competitive to get into. And what happens is they all start with kinesiology, all of them. And kinesiology is like the shiny penny program for everyone to get into physio. And that's kind of how I view cybersecurity programs at a bachelor and master's level right now. They're the shiny penny of new things. It's niche, it's in high demand, it's interesting, and has some level of status when you talk among your peers. So I think the biggest thing is that there are a lot of different entry points to get into cyber. Not all of them have to be through a formal education from a bachelor's or a master's. I think the best thing for anyone, for any program, you know, cyber included, would be know yourself, learn about yourself, invest in yourself first, because that's the best return on investment you will ever get. You know, other less formal ways to get into cyber. There are a lot of cybersecurity boot camps in Canada right now. I know they're all over the States. These are 8 to 16 week programs, which kind of offer you a day-to-day, very hands-on way of getting into cyber and getting some skills. Some online options, Cyber. I like Cyber. They have a SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3 course bundles, which I think are solid. And they're about 8 to 12 weeks, and the costs are very reasonable compared to a 4-year degree with, you know, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 of tuition. So, but ultimately, I'm a big fan of industry certs. So starting with CompTIA, probably going to Cisco and a few others, Microsoft. I think that's a great way to start, and to keep the costs down. CBT Nuggets, IT Pro TV. There are a lot of different paths, and I think I think if you would ask a university person or a university in Canada or the US, they'll kind of be on the legacy bandwagon. You know, the best way to go through it is to get, you know, a legacy way, a bachelor's or a master's. And I don't see that as necessarily being not only the only way, and not necessarily the best or most effective way.
Yeah. So keeping it on the same vein as education, but if, you know, this individual, Darius, reaches right out to you, Joe, directly, like he's already committed to the program of a higher education degree, he's about to get out. What do you tell someone in this position who's made the decision, gone down the road, and now they want to position themselves to break into cyber using a computer science degree?
Yeah, well, I think I was doing some research, and I think it was out of like the top 50 schools in America that have a computer science program. I think only 20 or 21 of them actually have a cybersecurity program or offer coursework as well. So I think the United States has got a lot of catching up to do. I'm sure everybody does, but I agree with these guys that the degree part is not something that I would put a lot of weight in right now. Now, if you're already in that program, be proud of it and absolutely give it your all. Don't wait until you're graduating. Pay attention to where you have gone to school and who else might have gone to school and gone through that program, because I think when you're coming out, it's this massive world of unknown, and there's a lot of scary moments for a lot of people that are just like looking for direction, and they're listening to people like us, or they're listening to all sorts of people, and they're getting info from everywhere, and they're not sure necessarily like what's the next step. I do think that if you're just getting out of college and you're applying for jobs and that's like what you think is going to work out, it might. It's not a high probability results thing that I would expect. You need to be networking. I would start with the college program. I'd find out people in LinkedIn, who else got this degree program? Hey, like, give me some information. It's at least an excuse to reach out and connect to people, because I do feel like who you know can lead to way more fruitful paths than just putting a degree on your resume. That honestly, most recruiters, most people that are looking at these resumes, they don't know the difference between a good cybersecurity program and one that was not that great. it's just it's a big unknown territory right now. But I think if you're just kind of waiting for someone to reply to your application because you got a degree, I mean, you could be waiting for a long time. And so I think we probably all give that advice all the time anyways, outside of just this scenario, but that's where you need to be the most aggressive. You got your whole cybersecurity career in front of you. You might as well prep for the busyness of that career by getting really busy trying to get that career instead of just submit and cross your fingers. It's not going to work probably.
Yeah.
Joe, I just got
please go on.
2 points actually, because Joe mentioned something really, I think, helpful there. Having a good recruiter that knows you and gets you and knows the activities that you've been doing and how passionate you are is massive. I did something quite unorthodox recently, but it worked. We had taken a brief with a customer, qualifying a new role, and they were talking through the sort of person they're looking for. And be honest, not once did they mention about a degree they're looking for. But they were talking about this person, and immediately I thought of someone who I've been speaking to for the last number of months. And this person has called me, not like incessantly, but they've messaged me. They asked, very courteous, like, could they arrange a call? So we had a catch-up call, and I've been tracking their progress and their activity on LinkedIn for months and months and months. On the back of that, I said to the hiring manager, let me just share with you someone's LinkedIn profile. So I shared my screen. I said, what about this guy here? He said, yeah, that's the best candidate we've seen. And this role had been advertised by their HR for the last 4 weeks. And they've done numerous interviews and no one was fitting for their requirements. And on paper, they said this person was exactly what they were looking for. And within 5 days, they hired that person after doing 2 rounds of interview. And that was the only candidate they interviewed through us. And it was because I knew this guy. They took sort of my feedback on him, and also I just loved his attitude. And it's because of that I wanted to make that intro for him, and it made a massive difference. And I think, just sort of reiterating Joe's point, having someone in your corner who knows the industry, who actually knows what they're talking about and can do those sort of things, can be massively impactful, because without that, this guy wouldn't be working in that role. And then one other thing is just in terms of degrees, and this is purely my own opinion, if I was to go and get a degree and I wanted to work in security, I'd go and get a degree in software engineering. I wouldn't be doing a cybersecurity degree. From my perspective, security just sits on the top of everything else, and skills or demand for software engineering is massive, and I don't see that dying anytime soon. And I think sort of there's more and more roles that we have, in particular, I'm just saying my business in Australia, in sort of security engineering, that are requiring scripting or coding skills, and they're the skills that I would be learning, and then I'd be learning security on top of that, and that can take you down lots of different paths after.
100%.
Yeah, it's a great point. And part of the reason I always tell people too, working in the industry, you kind of have to have some understanding of how it's supposed to work, so then you can understand how you can break it or how it doesn't work or when it's misbehaving. But so switching it over to Paul, since in your intro, you had mentioned that you help with freelance as well as permanent to hire. Sim asks, are there freelance opportunities in cybersecurity, and, what type are commonly offered? And I'd be curious if you can answer this question, but also continue on and share with us how you might be able to use an experience that's not permanent but freelance to better position yourself as a candidate in the market.
Yeah, sure. So there are lots of freelance opportunities in cybersecurity. I'd say roughly half of my desk sometimes can be freelance. It does tend to have peaks and troughs when there's extra demand for things. So some of the services that are commonly asked for, say anything that's like consultancies do. So consultancies are just souped up freelancers all grouped together. So you've got things like pen testing consultancies, they will be freelance pen testers. You got threat intel consultancies, there will be threat intel freelancers. So anything that a consultancy does, you can do as a freelancer. So I've forgotten the other half of your question, sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem. So my question was, if you're able to get this freelance skill, how can you position it like on a resume or in a conversation when you're networking to best sell it as real experience?
I mean, typically freelancers do tend to be experienced anyway. It's very rare to get a freelancer who's fresh out of university or from any other role. They tend to be very experienced people who hit the ground running, because you have to as a freelancer. Freelance work does tend to pay more. That's why people do it. And because of that, companies expect you to go in, hit the ground running. No need to sort of introduce you to lots of different systems, because you already have exposure to lots of different things. And I think that's how you sell yourself as a freelancer. You're someone who can come in, solve a problem that is urgently needed to be solved, and then go when that problem is done. They are literally fire and forget people. So if you've got like a pen test that all your pen testers, they're all occupied. You have a big client come in who says, we need to get this job done. Go to your freelance pool, pick one of them. They do the job. That's it. There's no, to answer your question, how you used to sell that service, I think typically these people tend to be more consultants anyway. They tend to be people who can go into places, communicate effectively with clients, because that's how they earn their business. Freelancers will go on to another freelance role after they've done that one, and then another one, and another one. Mm-hmm. So the way you present yourself, you are effectively your own mini business, and as such, like a consultancy would present itself, I guess.
You got to sell it, yeah.
You got to sell it.
Yeah. So one. So I'm going to go to Joe with this question, and then to Daryl afterwards. So one thing that was a huge surprise to me personally, and I've been working in the industry for 17 years, I was under the impression that like a recruiter or a headhunter, as I thought of it, was something that was exclusively reserved for those people who had like reached the top, and they were like, the silver bullet that could be pulled out and shot through, right? So for me, being new to the industry or a fresh college graduate, whatever, trying to pivot in, I didn't think recruiters were for me. And I don't think that's true. Butch actually asks in the comments here that he's looking to break in the industry. Welcome to the club, Butch. It's awesome in here. He wants to know, are there any tips on how to like find recruiters or connect with recruiters and how to build and grow? So Joe, what would you say to someone who's in this situation?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the location as well. I actually ran kind of like a funny little search that's probably not super accurate, but I ran it for all of our countries before, and it was just targeting people that have recruiter title or talent acquisition specialist, and then a Boolean search string with a bunch of cyber terms. In the United States, there was almost 1,000 people that came up as recruiters or folks that currently have that title and are doing some cybersecurity recruiting. Canada, Daryl, you're a pretty valuable guy. There was 30 that showed up in that same search. So I'm sure it's not completely accurate. But then in the UK, there was 145, and then in Australia, there was 24. So Ricky, I mean, you're just like you're a gold nugget out there. But the thing is,
there's plenty more.
That's what I'm saying. Like the search itself, it's not a super accurate thing, but clearly it showed a vast difference in results on a country basis, right? And so I think there are people out there that are going to be constantly sharing jobs. They're constantly going to be, visible and active. Now you need to come up with a way that you want to present yourself to being a partner to that person. I think if you reach out to a recruiter in the middle of their day at 2:30 in the afternoon and say, hey, I would love to talk to you about the ways that you can help me. And I know you don't know me. Low percentage chance that we're going to be like, yes, I've been waiting for this message to come through. So, I mean, we're going to help very often, but I think understanding when's a good time maybe to catch a recruiter with that kind of note, and then appealing to them in a way that says, hey, look, I'm in to learn. I am into to kind of understand the best ways that I can navigate this. And, if you have any other recruiters that you would recommend, et cetera, that's something that I've done many times. But I think understanding the humans that we are, and that, I've had to lock my kid in the back room with snacks for this entire show. We have human things that we're all dealing with, that we have to that have to take into account. We don't just wake up every day and go, man, just give me jobs, give me candidates. This is a transactional thing. And so I think if you can remember that and appeal to the human side of what we do, that can probably give you a tip on getting a better response.
Yeah. So Daryl, what about for Canada?
Oh no, not another someone else who wants to join our industry. There's lots of recruiters out there, both generalists, IT specific, and there's plenty of cyber people who do cyber here as well. I just think of two groups that I'm a part of on Facebook, which is Recruiters Online and Recruiters who actually make placements. And they're for recruiters only, so other people will not be able to join if they're IT people who just want to learn, or let's say salespeople who just want to kind of tap into the recruiters experience and whatnot. They're groups for recruiters. You can ask specific questions, and you can really get some free but very worthwhile advice. And here are two groups where, I have 26 years. There are people with 30, 35 years plus that have been doing this forever, and they remember faxing resumes to clients. I still do, by the way. So there's a lot of resources out there. It is not. I'll be honest. I don't think it's an easy industry. It has its moments. I think everyone here could probably say it definitely has its moments. There are happy dances, we all do, on some weeks, and there are some frustrations as well. So to the person who's looking to break in the industry, first, good on you. But I think I think join a couple of these groups and start asking questions. I think you'll get some really blunt and honest answers from people who've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. So switching over to Ricky, because I'm kind of curious about this. First of all, I just want to point out that Haunted Hacker Australia is calling you royalty in the chat. So I didn't realize we were, So Edward J. Cox, actually, some people may not have thought to put this here, but I'm actually kind of curious. Joe pointed out that he did some research and found that, there wasn't a ton of recruiters in Australia, but you said there was. So, like any industry, I think that there's people who might poison the well for those who can do it. But since you're being touted as royalty, clearly you're good at your job.
That's not me writing that, by the way.
No. Okay, I see. So, I guess guys, or Ricky, to your point, how many bad recruiters are there? So we're telling people, make a connection, reach out, network, all this, and then they do it, and the guy or the woman is terrible at their job. So, what's the kind of ecosystem of cyber recruiters from your perspective, so we have that kind of awareness?
Yeah, so shout out to Ryan there. I appreciate the kind words there. I think you just got to do some research, like Daryl was saying. So I think, to be honest, LinkedIn is a great place for that, because you can just look at a recruiter's activity. If they're just pumping out, look at their activity feed, and if it's just job advert, then it's basically how engaged are they in the InfoSec community? Are they actually sharing advice? Are they going to conferences? Are they going to meetups? Are they actually participating, or they are more of an observer? Because if they're just literally all about filling jobs, then do they truly understand the community, the industry? And that makes a big difference. That's just my opinion. So I think just have a look at someone's activity. Are they actually providing advice already? Because it is tough. Because the thing is, recruiters, we've got a natural bias, whether we like it or not, because we get paid on essentially getting people jobs. So there's a bias there, but I think a good recruiter knows this is a long-term situation. So for me, I give people advice that goes against me placing that person somewhere sometimes. And I get often people contact me literally just asking for career advice in terms of, I've got these two situations here. What do you think I should do? And it's a great position to be in, because it means it's like you're a trusted advisor, essentially, because people trust your feedback. Obviously, again, it takes time to try and find those people. But if you just start observing, again, LinkedIn and comments and stuff like that, then it'll give you an idea of what that person's about.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a question in the chat that I was trying to find, but it's like a flowing, raging river in there right now. So, but Paul, I want to get your thoughts on this. So recently I did a video, a fixed produced video on Simply Cyber on 5 mistakes people are making. And one of them I thought was going to be racy and contentious, and it wasn't from the community, but from a cybersecurity recruiter perspective, I posited that boot camps, you got to be careful, because in the underlying thesis was more expensive doesn't mean more value, right? So people are charging ridiculous amounts for boot camps, and it doesn't necessarily have return on investment. From the UK perspective, how are candidates and hiring managers, like, what's the perceived value of boot camps, and how is that working out?
And I do have a very strong opinion of boot camps, and it's not in their favor, put it like that. There are quite a few boot camps going around that charge excessive amounts of money for things that aren't really worthwhile in the UK. One common theme I've seen is the CEH certification. Now, it can be valuable if you're in America and working for the DoD. In the UK, it's equivalent of a meme. It's not worth any. They'd have to pay me to do it, put it like that, rather than me pay them money to take their certification. And yet there's companies that will charge candidates thousands of pounds to do that cert, and they're basically flushing their money down the toilet at the end of the day. There are a couple of ones that I would recommend, however. That being said, some of them are more aimed at specific sort of targets. So, for example, there's one that does free certifications, which is why I'd recommend it, for ex-forces. So if you've recently left the army, for example, you can go and do this boot camp. They'll get you, I think they currently do the CREST certifications, which are valuable in the industry, and that will open up doors for you to get jobs. So there's a few that I would say, yeah, I'm happy to recommend them, but the vast majority, nah.
Oh. Anybody else in the panel have a thought about boot camps before we move on to the next one?
I think
there's a lot of scams out there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I swore I wouldn't do that again, and I certainly did. Daryl, what are your thoughts on boot camps from the Canadian perspective?
I think there's a lot of them out there. They're privately done for the most part, which means that they can charge what they want. They can put together their program as they want, and people will latch onto it. I don't think paying more is necessarily going to get you a better value, but I can certainly say that here, anyways, there are a few. I won't name them because I don't want to be promoting them in any way. But there are a few that I think have some value. They're relatively low cost. These are programs where perhaps some of the instructors are doing this on a volunteer basis. They're trying to add to the community. They're saying, hey, I'm going to give up 4 hours of my day on Monday morning for 4 hours just to teach one thing, whatever it is. And I think there's value in that. And I think because it comes from industry, these are industry people who are working in it rather than just trying to sell you something. So I think there is some value, but you have to pick and choose. Yeah.
Ricky, on the boot camp?
No, I think Daryl's nailed it. You do your research. There's a lot of shit out there, basically. And you just need to filter. A lot of people are after your money. But there's, like everything, there's always the good, bad, and ugly. And there will be good ones out there. And it's already been mentioned, there's plenty of good stuff on there in terms of Cybery and other places. You don't have to do these expensive boot camps, because in the whole grand scheme of things, in terms of degrees, certifications, boot camps, it's all much of a muchness. And I think do the research first. My biggest piece of advice for anyone in all of these things, if particularly certifications, but even boot camps, is if you're thinking of doing something, go search LinkedIn, see who's done that particular thing, and go and ask some people their feedback and what impact it made on getting a job. Because that will tell you. Because I'm not even going to go down the whole CH topic, because that's a minefield.
Yeah.
But just ask people's opinions who's done it, and then that's a very independent thing. And if you get enough 10, 15, 20 people that have maybe done something, that will tell you whether it's worth it or not, and that could save someone a lot of time and money.
Yeah. So another topic that really comes up quite often, it's almost a meme at this point, is entry-level job, 5 years experience, right? And I'm kind of rounding the numbers a bit, but the gist is that entry-level jobs aren't for entry-level candidates. One interesting thing, Edward put this in, so I'll direct this to Paul initially. And this was a discussion going on in chat about the idea between that, but in your respective countries or the areas that you're recruiting from, what is entry level? What's a common kind of qualifier for entry level in cybersecurity to the UK?
So I think before I get into that, I think it's important to note there's no single path into cyber. People come from all different backgrounds, weird and wonderful. Some people have been working in IT before and then move into cyber. Some people just come straight from uni. So there's no real homogenous group, if you like. I would consider certain roles to be more entry level than others. So, for example, you won't be able to be a CISO at entry level. That's just not going to work. Or maybe a senior threat intelligence person or incident response. Typically, I tend to see the roles more towards SOC as entry level, especially obviously line one. Some pen testing roles can be entry level. We have something in the UK called Cyber Essentials, which it's not really pen testing. It's glorified vulnerability scanning, but does give people the industry that they might not have otherwise. So I think it depends more on the role than the actual, like what they've done before that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, Joe, I'm more familiar with the United States here. So just to jump around, Ricky, in Australia, yeah, in Australia, what does entry level mean per se? Like how much experience?
Same as what has already been mentioned, to be honest. It's very similar. So again, entry level can mean different things, because is it entry level to like entry level first ever job, or is it entry level into security? Because someone could be 10 years as a network engineer, and then they're going to move into a SOC role, and they're going to very quickly, like they could take up a more senior role very quickly, because so many roles. I guess you could, again, like pen tester. You could be a solid sysadmin or a developer, or you could be a developer who's going to become an AppSec engineer. That's not entry level, but you can perform the role pretty much from day one, depending on your background. So there's no answer, to be honest, in my opinion, to that question. Without trying to be vague or anything, there's so many different circumstances depending on the requirements. Each role, each criteria is different. So you look at the job description, and I think the responsibilities of the role will tell you if it's entry level or not.
Thank you. So switching gears here.
Hey, Jerry, I actually had a real quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
For the guys, do you guys feel like there will be a change in that, though? This problem that we have, like in the United States, I've talked about this very much, that I feel like this issue, whether or not it's the job description's incorrectly typed or just the expectations are wrong, but there's clearly a disconnect between what we have available and what people are asking for. And the entry-level issue is a problem. Do you guys see a trend of this being a big focus where you all are, and that there's a lot of people focusing on that? We need to address this as well, or is this something that's just kind of an ongoing problem? And obviously, I don't want to open it up. That doesn't work here. Anybody that wants to raise their hand and ask that, I'd love to get your opinion on that.
Panel,
yeah.
Ricky, yeah, let's have it, Ricky.
Yes, that's not getting solved anytime soon. You've had this industry explode. Particularly the last 12 months, it's gone crazy. But over the last 4 or 5 years, the industry has just gone. It's grown. It's a maturing industry. If you compare it to things like software engineering is a much bigger space, and it's just that's an even more difficult market than cybersecurity, I think, to hire people. It's just roles are going a lot quicker, and salaries are amazing. Not to say that it's not in the cybersecurity world, but basically you've got this maturing industry and these roles popping up, and you've got some companies know what they're hiring for, some companies don't know what they're hiring for. No one's looking to fix this problem, or hardly anyone's looking to fix this problem. Everyone's looking for the experienced person to walk in through the door. And that just doesn't work, because you've got this volume of jobs and this number of people that can actually do the jobs. So companies need to be more open-minded and actually hire people that have a baseline of skills. But I just don't see it, to be honest. It's one of the things we always talk to customers about in terms of their actual requirements, what they need, and how flexible they are. Because ultimately, if they're more flexible, we can find good people for lower salaries because they haven't done that role before. But they're, again, not so you want to underpay people, but they don't have to pay top dollar to get the best people. There's a lot more options out there, and no, it's not getting fixed anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
I think, Joe, I think that's an absolutely fantastic question, and I think it speaks to a much bigger issue in the industry. It's only been in the last 3 to 5 years that we've really seen cyber take a chief seat at the executive level, and that starts from the top down. So here we don't have a chasm, but we do have a whole bunch of gaps in between. There's salary gaps. There's salary expectation gaps, especially for people who come through cyber boot camps and bachelor's and master's programs who say, hey, as soon as you finish this program, the average salary right out of school is $78,000. That's or $89,000, or take your pick from wherever you are in the world. And and that includes, you should be able to do A, B, and C at this level. Well, a lot of these programs are not. They're glossing over the operational piece. They are talking very broad education. And then the cyber boot camp, which doesn't talk broad, but tries to get specific, but maybe misses the mark. So there's a whole bunch of gaps that are being talked about here that are really contributing to people moving around. And I think retention is a huge issue here. People stay 4, 6 to 8 months in an organization in their first cyber role, and boom, they're gone. Why? Because someone offered them $20,000 more. They don't want to be in that role forever. They feel that they're, I've done this for 8 months. I'm really good at it now. I want to get on to the next level. But they haven't really become an expert at the level they were at to begin with. But they just want to move on. So there's a whole bunch of expectations, salary, and of course, expectations from both the school or academic side, as well as the client side, that need to be addressed. And no, it's not going to be addressed in one fell swoop, and I don't think it's going to be addressed quickly.
So one question that, I feel like there's certain buckets of topics and questions that I get asked regularly, and one that we haven't touched on that I think will resonate with a lot of the people in the audience. By the way, thank you for being here. We've been steady at 135, which is awesome. And this is the question for the panel, and I'll start with Paul. But, the gist of this question, and this came from someone on YouTube, is it too late? Am I too old? Have I gone too far down the road to pivot into cybersecurity? And, this particular individual asks about making top salary, but please touch on the salary piece, if you would, Paul, to answer this individual's question. But can you talk a little bit about the bigger picture? Is it too late for me? You know what I mean?
It's never too late. I think, especially someone in their older 30s, they will have skills from other jobs that they might have done. Even if they hadn't necessarily been working, if they were a parent bringing up a child, you're still going to be learning skills from that. And when you actually get a role, you'll be able to start using those skills, showing how much value you have, and ultimately they will clients and companies will pay you for the value you bring. So if you prove that you can do a really good job, your salary will increase. So it is very much about the effort you put in, I guess. But it's never too late. You know, if you work hard, you can make that top salary bracket. It's never too late.
And yeah, so there is no too old in cybersecurity in the UK. Yeah. Anybody else on the panel? I don't know if it's different in other parts of the world or not.
No, it's the same. I've got a friend who pivoted into security. I'm not going to mention his name. That's not fair. But basically, let's say 4 or 5. No, not even that. 3-4 years ago, he wasn't in a cyber role. He was software engineer. He's done some other stuff, and he was quite senior. But he was desperate to get into security, and had always been sort of tinkering with security stuff and been messing around hacking legally, at least most of the time, probably. Doing bug bounties and other stuff. And his first job in security was a senior consultant in pen testing. And he managed to get that because he was able to demonstrate to his employer, the company that hired him, and he got decent, good money to start with as well, his additional skills. It wasn't just about hacking shit and writing reports. He could demonstrate a value add. And that was, from a consultancy point of view, that customer engagement. He could demonstrate the ability to manage customers, project manage, and do sort of the sales side type stuff, or pre-sales, post-sales, that basically pen testers don't generally want to do. So he added a lot of value rather than just the job of penetration testing. And he's now in a senior role, managing over 50 people, and on good money for a well-known company out there. And there's another guy as well I remember him trying to get his first job, and in the equivalent of Australian, I'm not sure what it would be elsewhere, but $150,000 would be very decent money. He was looking for a role to go from, I can't remember what it was doing, but again, into security, particularly, again, pen testing and red teaming. And to go from not working in security to earning that sort of level, which would be close to principal consultant money, or at least very senior consultant money, would be like, it's not heard of. But again, he demonstrated value add through the experience that Paul mentioned, having this other experiences that he could bring to the table that his company could then utilize, meant that they got a value add out of him. So it's all about demonstrating prior experience as well, because it's not just about what you bring to that immediate role, but also your background and what else can you utilize to actually make the gap smaller and add value on top of that.
Yeah. Excellent points. Another common question that is like this panel is uniquely equipped to answer, which I love. I got it in various versions and in the pre-screening questions, but Lorenzo asks basically the question, right? And let's start with Canada, Daryl. And I want to touch on all of these. If I am not a citizen of your country, how difficult is it for me to get a job in your country, Canada?
Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Just I'm not an immigration person, but I will say this, that a lot of people look at Canada very similar to how the U.S. does their foreign visas, work visas, and that's not the case here. Canadian companies traditionally are not huge employers of foreign workers. And that includes in high demand industries like anything in IT or cyber. What typically will happen is you'll have someone who will come over as a student and come over on a student visa. And with that student visa, they also get a 3-year work permit while they're here. Now, but they're coming over as a student first, and a potential employee second. So for how hard is it for a foreign citizen to get a job in Canada? Immigration system is very, very tight. And, even though we're talking about here we are in an industry where we're all looking for the same people. There's more jobs than there are qualified people. And with that said, in general IT in Canada, there are still a lot of people here who are qualified and are looking for work. So Canada doesn't, although there is still a skills gap, Canada doesn't have perhaps the need, let's say, that the US does with a lot of the foreign work visas that they do. And that, that follows through with how our immigration system works.
Okay, excellent. Australia, I'm not down under or down under, but I want to work down under. What do I do? Is it tough?
Extremely, yeah. I get messages all the time. Like there's not much. And again, this is just an Australian thing. Australia is a very difficult country to get into. I'm not from Australia. I'm from the UK myself, and I'm very lucky that my wife is from Australia. But to get sponsored over here is just rare. Like you need a pretty standout background, if I'm honest, I think, to get sponsored these days. Working for well-known companies and have a basically sort of not necessarily rare, but a really strong skill set. Someone who's I don't know, just a standout profile. You've spoken at DEF CON, you've done different things or things that help say, yeah, this person's got maybe a bit of a name in the industry, or they've just got a very solid background working at someone like Google or a big tech company. It just doesn't happen a lot, unfortunately. In terms of people applying for their own visas, because the thing is, people can go through the formal processes, and I'm not a visa expert either. I'm not going to give specific advice, but they can go through the formal process of applying for their own sponsorship and get their own sort of work visa as such. But the problem is trying to land your first job in Australia, even if you are, again, it's very difficult now because of COVID to get into the country. But even if you're here, let's go back pre-COVID days, back in the old days, it was still very difficult because Australia isn't the easiest country to land your first job in if you don't have local experience. And I hate the thing of local experience, and that's a whole nother conversation. But it's not easy. Pre-COVID was hard. Now it's even harder. And I really feel sorry for people that want to, have these new experiences and move countries. You've just got to be persistent, to be honest, and be specific about, again, in a similar way for like an entry-level person, is know the type of companies you want to work for, know where you can add value and demonstrate that. Having a shotgun approach and just applying for all sorts of things. Because if you go on like the local job boards and you apply for roles and you're outside the country, you're not even going to get looked at. Unfortunately. And the thing is, someone could have the right skills, they could have permanent residence, they just need a job and they'll fly over here. But it's not as simple as that. So, if you want to do it, then I think trying to get your own visa is a good start. And then you just got to be persistent.
Yeah, and real quick, I do want to go to the other areas, but someone from like the third row lobbed out. Maybe I don't know if this is a disagreement with you, Ricky, or not, about provincial programs. Is that kind of a caveat, or is this not relevant to what you were just saying?
I don't even know what that is, to be honest with you.
Okay, well then let's just
that might be for me. Yes, the person is right. There are some provincial programs that, again, it kind of goes into that skilled worker piece. However, we're talking low numbers compared to how many people want to come to Canada and work here. So yes, there are some provincial programs. Yes, there are federal programs, but overall, very challenging to get in here. And the vast majority who are successful, from trying to get that work permit, are really coming over as a student first, to whether it's a cybersecurity program or a bachelor's or a master's or a just a post-grad of some kind, and then getting a work permit along with that.
Okay. Well, thanks for addressing that, Daryl. And sorry, Ricky, when it came in, you had been talking, so I assume.
That's all right.
All right. So getting my tea and crumpets ready, because I want to move to the UK, Paul. What's and I don't even know if that's even inappropriate. I literally have I'm that uncultured. What's the deal? How tough is it to break into the United Kingdom?
Incredibly tough. I can't talk about moving into immigration without mentioning the B word, which is Brexit. So up until December, so if I couldn't find anyone in the UK, I could always go to Europe, where there's a pool of 400, 500 million people to fish from who don't need a visa. Since December, we have left the EU. So obviously that pool has gone, but we still don't have any. Well, I don't think the government knows what to do with immigration, to be honest with you. And it's companies, they just don't go outside of the UK. We are very candidate rich as a country goes. We have a lot of programs run by the likes of GCHQ, the military, the banks are pouring a ton of cash into developing people, which is quite a fortunate position to be in. So it means we have a lot of people here already who are looking for work. So we don't necessarily need to go outside of the UK. I've only seen people come into the UK. Usually it's via like the big four, like PwC, who would have a branch in India, for example, and they'd bring an Indian over to the UK. That has happened a few times. I think Tata's another example. That's probably one of the only ways you can get over here. And another blocker I find is security clearance. So often we get asked to have people with security clearance. Now, to be eligible in the UK for SC, which is equivalent of NATO secret, for you guys, if you know what that is, you need to have 5 years UK residency. So you need to be living here before you can even get that job. And obviously, if you're not going to be able to do it. So it is incredibly tough. And I still don't know what's going to happen with post-Brexit. We're still in limbo here.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds challenging everywhere. What about in the United States, Joe?
It's super easy. You just show up and you apply and you get a job. That's really all I have to say. No, I have some dialogue with people sometimes online where they kind of let me know that they're running the end of their timeline, and they're starting to kind of freak out because if they don't get a job by X date, they have to go back to their country. I mean, I personally feel like if you have the bravery to leave your country and move to another country to pursue a career, you've probably got the grit to withstand the trials and tribulations of actually going for that job. But it is very difficult. I mean, we were talking about the degree program earlier. If you are coming from another country, I think getting a cybersecurity degree is an outstanding idea because it's a way for you to actually come to America and get an opportunity for that. But many of the time they're filtering through that program, and then there's not a whole lot of support for them to sort of navigate those waters. I mean, it's such a cutthroat industry. I mean, you have to ask yourself, okay, there's 500,000 projected openings in the United States, next year, right? Do I feel like I'm going to be able to get one of those? There's so many things that people have to go through that I've never had to go through. So I can't really talk about, how difficult it can be on a person by person basis, but it's no different from these guys, in the sense that there's plenty of obstacles to deter you from doing it. And then if you do finally break through, I would recommend looking up companies that have a great presence. Like say, if you want to come to the United States and you're in Nigeria, right? Look up the list of the companies that really have a strong presence in Nigeria that also offer these cyber jobs. You might actually have an opportunity to continue working with that company as you transition and go through an education program in the United States and then work for them in the United States. That's a different way to maybe look at it. I'm sure it's not that easy as I painted it, but I'd be at least looking for places that are in my backyard for wherever I am. And do they have relations to the country that I actually want to move to? Focus on that maybe first, and that can at least raise your odds of finding a direct target to look at.
Yeah, certainly a long play, but one that is not an unblazed trail to walk down. I'm kind of curious. So this might be a blanket statement, but I got some questions in the chat. So I'm kind of curious, I guess, Joe, if you want to answer this one first, and if there's anything different across the panel, let me know. But a lot of opportunities in a post-COVID world have now become remote work. So if I live in country, if I live in South Africa and I want to work in the United States, is it the same reality as if getting a job that is on site? Basically, does remote eliminate any type of these barriers you're talking about?
Some companies for sure are going to be open to that, but from my experience, that's genuinely a hard stop for a lot of the organizations. In fact, I've actually had more clients, now that I think about it, intentionally tell me, hey, by the way, got to be US based. Because I guess they're starting to see candidates filtering through, and I do get a lot of applications. So if I post a remote job, I get a lot of applications from people, in other countries, and I have to let them know, hey, this one's just not approved. A lot of times, the time zone difference is a big factor too. So, I mean, if you're in Australia and you're applying for a US based job in New York, I mean that alone presents a dynamic that is going to scare off some clients just right off the bat. So, they're out there, but yeah, I mean, it's just a very tough thing. That's a low percentage. My guess is probably less than 5% of opportunities can just work literally anywhere globally at all times. But I'm totally throwing that number out there. I don't see them very much.
Well, and I might argue, like, as we're talking about it, I'm thinking too, a lot of people in the audience are trying to break into cyber or entry level, and some of these roles, I'd even, bet money that mattered a little bit to me that these roles you're talking about, this 5%, are more senior level. Yeah. You're very specialized. You understand Google Cloud and no one else does. So you can live wherever you want.
Paul's probably got some candidates that probably have a little more autonomy with that freelancing, to where it's like, hey, we don't care. We just need someone incognito or whatever can come in for a few weeks and knock it out. The specialist lives in Romania. He's probably in the thick of it with all the bad guys and knows everything going on. We'd like that kind of intel, whatever. So, I mean, there's definitely different situations. If it's a full-time role, though, that's what I'm talking about more so, being a real employee of the company.
Yeah. So is that consistent at the other places, or if not, Paul? Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I found with companies employing people overseas, the difficulty they have is justifying it to the tax man sometimes. So that's, for example, you said Romania, it's a UK company hiring someone over there. Sometimes in certain countries, you need to have a local authority or local presence in order to be able to employ someone. So even if the job is remote, let's say the data center's in the UK and they're based overseas, if they don't have a local office in Romania or wherever it is paying taxes and what have you over there, they can't always employ that person. And so that's usually the biggest blocker I've found when it comes to having people based outside of the country where the remote job is advertised. It's all to do with taxes.
That's interesting. That's surprising to me, but not like, it's always about follow the money, right? Always follow the money. So another question that got submitted in advance through Stefan Waldvogel's LinkedIn post. By the way, I don't know if Stefan's here, but he was kind of the brainchild of this live stream coming together. So much love and appreciation for that, because I think this has been fantastic. But it's around money. And, let's start with Ricky. The question was around, how do you negotiate the salary? Should you expect a pay cut? I don't know if the recruiters get involved with that piece, if they act as a middleman. I myself have had different experiences over life. So I'm kind of curious, to the question, Ricky, how would you respond?
So had to negotiate salary. So you talk about when we're, I guess, looking at a new job then.
I mean, I assume that the person submitting the question is gone through is working with you through the hiring process and has reached a point where we're ready to talk money. So
it's a very tricky one. To be honest, if you don't have a recruiter doing this for you, then what I really hate is if I'm someone who's searching a job online and I apply for the role, I don't know what the budget of that role is. A very high percentage of the time, the salary is never advertised. So you have no idea. You could go through this whole process and then get offered the role, and turns out it's a lot lower than what you were expecting. And that's such a waste of time. When we're working with our customers, we know what the budget is up front. So we know what we're working with. We talk to candidates that are in budget, and we set those expectations with our customers from the very first submission. And then we manage and handle that process through the whole thing. And then when it comes to offer stage, we want to make it as stress-free as possible and as easy as possible for our customer, but also the candidate. Money is a very personal topic, and people can get very nervous when it comes to talking about their own salaries. And it's a lot easier, I think, to have someone else talking about the money side of things. And essentially, we're going to get paid based, most of the time, if it's a contingency type of recruitment, you get paid based on someone's salary. So essentially, the higher the salary, we have an incentive to drive that as much as possible. Realistically, and if you're a good recruiter, an honest recruiter for long term, you're not just in it for the money. You want to get the right offer for the right person. It's not just about the most that company can pay. There's no point if they say our budget is 150 and then you send 3 candidates at 150K. That just doesn't make sense, unless that's what all of them were looking for. But in terms of the personal negotiation, we try and take it off the table and make it as easy as possible for the candidate and know what they're looking for. And then we try and maybe make it easier for them to say yes with an offer. Not the lowest possible thing, because I hate that question of what salary are you on, because that's irrelevant. You're not hiring someone for that job that they're doing right now, or what they used to do. If you're negotiating on your own, then I think you just got to look at what value you bring to that role. And I think identifying as early as you can, what is the budget? Because if your salary expectation is 100K or £50,000 or £100,000, but the budget is a lot less than that, then you're wasting your time. And I think it's much better to do that. Not like first question, first interview, what are you paying? But I think through the process, there'll be an opportunity to ask some questions. And I think asking tactfully and in the right way to show that you're not driven by money, but of course you're not here. That is still a factor in the process.
Yeah, Joe, do you want to comment on that? I know you and I have worked professionally together, and we've talked money. I'm kind of curious at the macro level what your thoughts are about this.
I mean, yeah, I agree that it's an awkward conversation. It seems like for a lot of folks, and I've even tried to help people understand, like, hey, if you get asked this question as from another recruiter or from HR, here's some examples of ways that you can answer that without pigeonholing yourself into one number. Because that's one of the big problems I see is that, you tell a recruiter a number, and if that recruiter is just not understanding, like, well, you haven't talked to the client yet, and I don't have all the information. So we're talking about a number based on what I gave you, not with what the client's giving you. You go through that interview process. I mean, if you have a good partnership with a recruiter, at the end of that time when we go, okay, I have a feeling we're going to get to a number here. I need you to talk to your spouse, or I need you to really crunch some numbers for me to understand, here's my floor for really mentally, like, where I know I'm not going to be able to entertain something, and share that with the recruiter if you feel comfortable with it, because that recruiter can then go to the client and say, kind of feel some things out, but really has it in their mind where they go, okay, we're going to offer this person 100. And you're like, I already know they're not going to accept less than 120. You can go to bat for them. You can find out if there's any pain points, but then also that person, they know that you're advocating for them to get a good salary. And that you'll accept the job for less than what maybe the initial target was going to be. Like, hey, you might say you're getting 120. Someone said, go for the experience over the salary. If someone comes in for 110 with an awesome job, a good recruiter needs to kind of already know you're going to accept that, if we get to that point. So I think that if you can build an open dialogue about that and know that a recruiter is not just in it for, that transactional part about it, the problem comes in with contracts. And that's where recruiters, I think, earn their poor reputation, because they will beat you down on a number. They usually come in with a nice round number, 50 an hour, 45 an hour, 70 an hour. It's never 64 or 83 or whatever. But the lower you go, the more money that goes into that recruiter's pocket. And a lot of these people know that. And so that's where the awkward, I think, conversation comes in. But the more you can build an open dialogue about money with your recruiter, especially if you think you're going to work with them multiple times or on multiple positions, you are only enabling us to do a better job, in my opinion, for you. And, that just takes time. That takes time. But if you go into it just assuming that we're all bad people, it's really going to limit the ability for you to have an effective partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Daryl, do you want to comment on salary negotiations in the Great North?
I think a good recruiter, one of their main jobs is to make sure that we have a win-win. And that's from a skills perspective, that's from a fit perspective, from a personality, lifestyle perspective, and yes, from salary as well. So when we're doing the intake with the client, we want to have a really good idea about what that budget is for that role. Let's say it's 100 to 120 plus bonus. Great. Perhaps I'm gonna fight them a little bit and say, I know this space. I really don't think you're going to see someone at 100, 110. I think you're going to be pushing that 120, and have that conversation with them early. Do they have room? And then on the other side, with the candidate side, I think a big piece of this is to understand who you're chatting with, understand their situation and what they are targeting. Because if they're targeting something, and I want them to ask the recruiter the question, what is the range for the role? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. If I've had people who I'm going for 110 job who said, I'm at 170 right now. I'm really looking to get to the next step. That's great. This role isn't for you, and that's fine. We'll see what else goes on. But I don't want to flog a candidate just to put someone in front of a client to impress them if we know it's not going to be a win-win at the end, because we're all going to have egg on our face. So I think that salary question should be talked about early. It should be closed on both sides as best as possible early, and to continue to have that conversation throughout. Because if you have a 3-week process, what happens if the candidate comes back and said, "Hey, I just got a promotion. I just got $15,000 more." Everyone, I see everyone's face, and you guys have seen it happen, right? All of a sudden, their situation changed. So have they moved the goalpost on us, or has the goalpost moved without them doing anything? But I think it's just important for as a recruiter for us to have that conversation and to keep on having it and reconfirming it.
And also bear in mind how many people are getting counter offered these days. So I ran a poll recently on LinkedIn, and I was quite surprised, but maybe not thinking about it actually. But most of literally, I think 60-70% of the people that voted were looking for a 20% or more pay increase when moving jobs. And that's interesting because I guess people want a pay increase. It's not just about the money why people move. There's obviously other factors, but it is a contributing factor. But I think I've never seen so many people getting counter offered now as I've ever done in the past. And I think that's another thing that employers, or us recruiters, again, being aware of, is one of the things that we talk about with candidates so early on. And you can do the best coaching you can and talking candidates through this. But if they talk to their employer and suddenly they get a ridiculous offer internally, and it's not just about money, but even like opportunities for growth and managing people or whatever it might be, sometimes it's hard to turn that down. And again, but money is an awkward topic. But I think as long as we know what the the options are and what the playing field is, we know what we've got to work with. And like Daryl said, we're looking for a win-win outcome for everybody. And I think at least having that information allows us to work with that and get hopefully the best outcome for everyone, including our customer.
We're going to be rounding it out here, and I want to run around the panel, starting with Paul. This question was one of the ones that submitted in advance. I will kind of reframe it, but what I would like you to share, Paul, is can you share with us like one, maybe it's a cert, and I know it can depend on the job, but like if it's one cert, one skill, one thing, or, that would be like, oh, that's what I like, or one thing that's like, oh, I don't like that. Like, either a bright red flag or a bright, rainbows and unicorns thing. What are you looking for? What gets you going?
Well, one thing, that's a hard question. I'd say something that makes you stand out, something that shows you're passionate about your subject matter that you've chosen. For example, if you want to be a pen tester and you're on Labs, Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, Root Me, any of them, you demonstrate that this is your passion, this is your hobby as much as a job. That's what I'd look out for.
Okay, all right. Daryl, same question. What's the magic?
You know what? I really like the summary section on a person's resume. I think this you can really make a big difference here. This can make you stand out. A strong, concise, clear summary statement of what you bring to the table. And a hint of personality and character can't hurt, but you have to be wary as well. So one of my favorites that I've seen in cybersecurity people is the ending statement. Through proactively hunting and mitigating cyber threats, I help keep my clients' names out of the evening news. That is going to catch my eye, and I'm going to continue looking at that resume and finding what else is there with that person.
Excellent. Ricky, you want to share your magic sauce?
Yeah, I know you've said one. For me, there's two things.
Okay.
But one of them, Paul's already mentioned. So I think demonstrating your interest and passion through action. So in terms of that self-learning, whether it's Hack the Box, Pen Tester Lab, or there's so many examples out there, people that go to conferences, go to meetups, document that stuff, put it on your CV, put it on LinkedIn, put it in your bio. So incorporating what Daryl mentioned there. But the key thing is outcomes. So what difference have you made? Because if you look at people's job titles and roles, they can all look very similar. And let's pretend you've got 3 different people that are all doing the same role, 3 people that are all pen testers, or 3 people that are SOC analysts. But what contribution did you make in that role? What difference did you make personally? What outcomes did you achieve? So for me, that's the difference. Again, using a specific example about, maybe some sort of breach that they stopped happening, or some sort of really interesting vulnerability that they found, or something that helps that person individually stand out over others. For me, that's what, again, stand out through, I guess, action, activity, document it, put it on your LinkedIn bio. That stuff, again, is one of the first things people will read. And also just make sure you put some outcomes in there too.
Excellent. Very actionable. Joe, rounding out the panel, what's the secret?
Yeah, well, I'm glad nobody kind of said what I was thinking, because I was like, I don't really have anything else I look for. And I think it applies to outside of cyber as well. But just if you get a chance to connect with someone, or if you're trying to pitch yourself in a visual way where a lot of people can see it, just being authentic and genuine, because there's such a pressure to be this, be that, have this amount of experience. Most of it's not even necessarily quantifiable, but we put it on resumes and whatnot. When you connect with a recruiter, especially if you don't think that recruiter has a ton of depth of knowledge, if you're feeding them a bunch of lines that you think they want to hear, you're probably setting them up to be failures. You're probably setting yourself up for sure to be failures. It's much easier for me to go to bat for someone that I feel like I can accurately convey what they do, what they like. And also, don't worry about if that doesn't resonate with one person. I love dad jokes. If I see a dad joke in someone's profile, I'm probably going to respond. Other people are like, gosh, I can't stand my husband or his dad jokes. I hate reaching out to people like this. But you want to get hired by people that are going to appreciate you for you. So you putting yourself out there in a way that it can connect with people, and then you keep that consistency going when you actually do connect with them, and you stay that same all the way through, you should hopefully end up in a place that appreciates you for you versus what they think they're hiring. So I think the best you can be you, and stay true to who you are, throughout, it should yield the proper results.
Awesome. All right. Well, let me, on behalf of the 135 people who stayed with us pretty much for the last hour and a half, I'd like to extend my sincere appreciation. I know some of you had to get up in the middle of the night to be here. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Very candid, no nonsense responses to a lot of the questions that so many people are having in trying to break into cybersecurity. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ricky. I'm really glad that you guys were here today to share all this information.
Yeah, thank you all, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, real quick before everybody bounces out of here, I do want to just point out that tomorrow we're doing another live stream. It's actually on the Cybersecurity Master Plan, Career Master Plan book that is coming out on September 9th, which you may notice I am one of the authors of. And we'll be, Erica McDuffie is going to be hosting the panel, and I will be just one of the panelists. But if you're interested in this text that's coming out, why we wrote it, how it can help you, break into cybersecurity and really have a meaningful, satisfying career, then please come join us and, check it out and see what's going on. But that is going to do it for us on Simply Cyber live stream. Thank you so much. And until next time, stay secure.